Buddy, I hope you guys are doing well. I'm just sort of getting ready here for the live stream for the community live. Let me just pull up. If you can just bear with me for a moment, I've got to pull up my everybody pull up the live on my iPad. If I can manage to do that, and I've got to bring in the folks from TikTok. We're getting there. Okay, so we are almost live on TikTok. Just bear with me for a second. It takes an extra moment to do this. And then we'll sort of get to the stuff. I'm sorry guys. When I use these multi-stream, when I stream multi-stream to TikTok and Substack and YouTube all at the same time, unfortunately TikTok with its plethora of limitations, not the least of which is that you can't go live from any other platform except TikTok Studio. So it always takes me an extra moment when we start the live to get that going. So hang on. So let me just say Admiral. You have to put a little title. Admiral says survivors couldn't call. Says survivors couldn't. We'll just leave it at that. No, maybe not because I spelled the word couldn't wrong. ... Survivors ... Okay, and now we'll just go live there. Okay, so now we're live in two places or three places actually. So okay, so what are we going to do today? So I think the three things. First of all, some housekeeping, guys, some technical housekeeping. First, I hope everybody's doing well. I'd said that before, but TikTok wasn't here yet. So I hope everybody's doing well. Secondly, I have a little bit of a technical issue this morning. That's why I'm running a little bit late. I have a little bit of a hum coming out of one of my devices. I haven't isolated where it's coming out of. I think it's my computer, my Mac Studio. That's this bad boy right here. I hope you guys can't hear it. But hey, Irish Aggie, how are you? Hey, Pandela, how are you? If any of you are hearing a hum and it's annoying, just toss something in the chat. Let me know, because it's annoying here. But I can't figure. It's gonna take me some time to troubleshoot it and figure out what's going on. If you're not hearing anything, that's a good thing. So the topics I want to cover today on our community live, Substack, TikTok, and YouTube. Two things. I just want to keep it to two things. We're going to keep the live a little bit shorter, and then we'll get more into it in the subscriber live at noon on Substack. But one is there was reporting today about the decision for that Netflix and Warner Brothers have made, that Netflix is buying Warner Brothers for, I've heard conflicting reports. I've read conflicting reports, 72 or 73 billion, 84 billion from a different publication. We'll see what it actually comes out to. And that's not really the news, because who gives a shit? I mean, I kind of give a shit, except for the fact that all the frickin', I paid Amazon $15 a piece for each Harry Potter movie that is saved in Amazon Prime now, and that's all going to be available on Netflix, I'm sure, with my Netflix subscription. But shit happens, and you just got to move on. But the Trump administration isn't happy about this, and I thought about that this morning when I first saw the news, and then I saw when I first saw the reports about this, and then I saw some subsequent CNBC reporting to validate my thoughts there, and I'll get into that in the second story today. But the first story that we are going to go over is this. Let me just bring it up here. Unfortunately, TikTok, yesterday, as usual, I was on TikTok and I got a surprise. I got both a restriction and a strike, because you never know what's going to offend the algorithm. The restriction was because I had brought up a news clip, or a couple of news clips, or maybe it may have been the CNBC stream I brought up. The C-SPAN stream, whatever it was. TikTok gets very bent out of shape with whatever the algorithm considers to be unoriginal content. Basically, the only thing that's okay on TikTok is me looking at you talking about shit. And I mean, there's other things I hope to be able to do eventually to improve the quality of that for my TikTok, the TikTok portion of these lives to make these more interesting. But I really can't bring. I can't bring anything from the outside into the stream, or else the stream will get restricted, and you guys won't even see it on your For You page. It won't pop up, even if you're a follower. So secondly, I got a strike because I was a little fired up yesterday. If you were with me yesterday, the live was it was more than a little bit spicy. And I'm always, my objective, my focus, my goal is to remind you how ridiculous the Trump administration is, how ridiculous Donald Trump is. That's my goal, is to remind you that this is a bunch of imbeciles, right? That is my primary function, period, as a political influencer. Always to remind you of the stupidity that we're living through, because I feel like that when things get overwhelming and they become borderline catastrophic, when you're reminded of the abject stupidity, you feel a little better. You feel like we can deal with this, because we're dealing with a confederacy of idiots. So I went a little too far yesterday, and I should know better. I've been on TikTok long enough to know how the game is played here, and to understand what the algorithm is going to give me a strike for. But in terms of my language and my rhetorical, my performative rhetorical negativity, I knew I went over the line for the algorithm's tolerance levels, and especially there might have been MAGA folks that were feeling a little bit snowflakey, and it may have reported it. So I got a strike. So I don't want to get that again, because a strike always leads to a ban here on TikTok, and then I'm out for a week or longer, and it's not worth it. So unfortunately, guys, I just have to talk for you guys, and I can't show you anything that I'm talking about. But we'll work on that. Let me just check TikTok. Thomas, do you have a voice filter on? I do not. Why? Do you hear something weird on your end, Thomas? I did mention, if you guys had just joined us, there's a little bit of a buzz coming out of my my computer, my Mac Studio. So I'm not quite sure if that's having an effect over there on. It sounds very high pitched. Really? Is everybody here? Is that anybody else out there in TikTok land having that issue? Or are you hearing my voice sounding like this? Or is it coming in normal? Or might this be something isolated to Thomas's feed? Please let me know. And so Bayray, it sounds fine. Jules, it sounds fine. So Thomas, it may be something going on your end. It may be a latency issue coming in just at your spot. Sometimes if you kind of check out of the live and you bounce back in, it'll can clear latency problems up. But I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure what else to recommend, other than kind of going out and in. I've had some latency issues on Substack as well, but TikTok's been pretty good with that recently. Anyway, so on that note, let's get to the news. All right. So all of you know, I don't have to tell you, because you all know, you're all following this shit, right? We all know that the Admiral, right? Is it Admiral Bradley, right? We all know that the Admiral Bradley, the commander, who was in charge of this particular region, where the boats were destroyed, where Hegseth allegedly, or didn't, but I believe he did, gave this horrendous order. He says he didn't, right? First, the Washington Post a few days ago reported he did. Hegseth says he didn't. Never happened, and there's been conflicting stories from Hegseth. But I believe he did give the order to unalive them all, right? This is the big story in the news, right? One of the big stories in the news. This is the latest scandal in, 7 scandals a day for the goofball Trump administration, and the multiplicity of scandals that are just piling up on the dysfunctional, incompetent, almost certainly inebriated Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Things can't get any better for Hegseth because he can't get any better. He's barely functional, it appears, on a good day. And when you combine his emotional dysfunction, and I can't get into that in any more detail because the algorithm doesn't like that, with his utter incompetence and profane ineptitudes, you just see this flailing dingbat, right? There's no other. I can't think of another appropriate word. Like this flailing dingbat who keeps failing over and over and over again, keeps getting away with it, and unfortunately, his failures are becoming more dangerous and more catastrophic. And as we've seen in this instance, clearly profanely illegal and tragic for the people who were unalived, right? Not saying maybe those people shouldn't have been arrested. That's a different discussion for a different day, because that's what U.S. law and international law, if they were really bringing the DRUGS over, if it was really a boat filled with that stuff, right? What a civilized country that follows its own rules of law and also international law would not just blow up the boat and unalive the people on it and then subsequently unalive the survivors, right? We would arrest them. And the Coast Guard could handle this just fine. You don't need all, significant assets from the U.S. military, right? Arrest them, bring them here, indict them, try them, convict them, and then if they're convicted by a jury, because that's how things work in the United States of America, then they are appropriately punished, depending on what the law requires, right? So, but that's not where Hegseth is incapable of that. And in addition to all of these other matters, he's next to Pam Bondi. He's probably the most prolific and pathetic Trump ass kisser. So you have this situation, right, where we're getting new reports every day, almost every hour at this point, about what really happened, right? And the question that really chicken shit GOP senators are finally asking, the question that even pretend GOP House investigators are asking, and all Democrats in the House and the Senate are asking, was not necessarily, we can't really focus on the illegality of the strikes in general, because you're not going to get the GOP cowards to face up to that or deal with that in any capacity in the House or the Senate. But the question now is the more pressing and profane issue, which is after that boat was destroyed, there were 2 survivors, right? And they were clinging to debris. And then the order was given to unalive them all. According to Washington Post, Hegseth gave that order. Hegseth says no. Now we have Admiral Bradley, who is saying that order was never given. It was his decision, right? He decided to do it, right? I still don't believe him. I think he's lying, and I think he's covering up for Hegseth. I think he's probably, and this is total speculation, this is not factual, I think he's probably a MAGA cult member, and he's ready to take one for the team, right? I think he's ready to sacrifice his career, to sacrifice his dignity, his honor, and maybe even his freedom, if this is truly found to be illegal, right? To take one for an imbecile like Hegseth and an imbecile like Donald, right? And maybe he thinks that's the honorable thing to do, right? While these cowards, just blame him and throw him under the bus, right? So the story, though, we keep hearing different versions of the story of like what happened and the details about how it happened. And there was some reporting that came out. Was it? It was this morning. It was CNN reporting came out, and I read it on CNN on my phone, and it was a CNN exclusive. And then I shifted over to Newsweek, which unfortunately I can't show you guys the Newsweek, the TikTok folks, the Newsweek article, but I can show it to everybody else. Newsweek re-reported the CNN. It was originally reported by CNN. Newsweek re-reported it. I read it on CNN on my phone, but then I tried to open CNN here, but to go into the live and stream it with you. But CNN is laughable, has a paywall now. I don't know if you go to CNN.com, but if you look at too many articles at CNN.com per month, they put up a paywall, which is comical because CNN is a joke on their best day. They're a half-assed joke. Who the fuck? Is anyone? I can't imagine is any actual person paying CNN, paying for a fucking CNN subscription to get access to their stories online. Highly unlikely. But fortunately, as the internet goes, Newsweek re-reported CNN's reporting from this morning, so I can still share it with you. What this CNN report, subsequently that Newsweek re-reported, tells us is that yesterday in the classified briefing with the House Armed Services Committee, where, as I had told you, the House Armed Services Committee, the Republicans in control of that committee, are trying to cover up for Hegseth, while the Senate Armed Services Committee is doing actual real work on this. And you can just tell by the reaction, if you listen to the reactions from the House GOP and the Senate GOP after their classified briefings yesterday with Admiral Bradley, normal people, just chicken shits, but they're normal people in the House, in the Senate, normal GOP are talking about how disturbed they were. Except for psychopath Tom Cotton, who clearly, Senator Tom Cotton, who really clearly, likes this. And I think he gets excited, like emotionally, physically aroused by the unaliving of people like this. But Cotton is a special kind of creep anyway. But otherwise, you're hearing Republicans in the Senate Armed Services Committee talking about how they're disturbed about this, and you're hearing Republicans, in the House Armed Services Committee talking about how they're very satisfied with. They have no more concerns about Hegseth. So what this reporting tells us is that the Admiral said that the men who were the survivors, who were clinging desperately to debris in the ocean when the Admiral ordered a second strike to unalive them. One of the original excuses that Defense Department, that Pentagon officials, aka Hegseth, came up with after Hegseth, I think, lied and said he didn't give the order, right? After Hegseth, I believe, lied and said he didn't give the order, right? The narrative was, well, the justification that not Hegseth, but the Admiral was justified in making that call, in destroying the little bit of debris that was left and unaliving the two survivors because they were trying to continue the effort of running the DRUGS over to the United States somehow, right? That was and any of us that heard it, right? It was laughable. It was as asinine as it was fucking laughable, right? It's almost like, stop it, guys. Just what the fuck are you talking about? When you start hearing these reports that these officials from the Pentagon were arguing that, well, they were trying to keep the DRUG run going somehow, right? Their boat is destroyed. They're injured. They're hanging on to debris in the fucking water. But they were going to call someone from the cartel. Hey, guys, we're just in the water, right? With maybe they had waterproof cases on their fucking cell phones. Hey guys, yeah, cartel guys, yeah, guys, we're in the water, and the entire power of the United States fucking military is like all around us, right? But we're gonna keep this thing going, guys. And we need you to like get another boat out here to pick this shit up and to get us. And we're gonna continue on to Florida so we could deliver our shit. Right? That's what the Defense Department idiots, right, wanted us, hoped that we might believe, right? There was that stupid fucking argument, right? And that was the argument for like a day and a half, right? Up until, I didn't see the news last night, so I didn't see this CNN report until early this morning. But that was the line, right? That they were somehow gonna call it in, right? And again, let's just, before I go into the reporting, think of how stupid they think we are, right? Or if not us, maybe the MAGA community. The MAGA leadership thinks that the MAGA community is that dense, right? That they would buy that. And they're not, right? No, that's not a thing, right? No, right? But that was the opinion, right? Until this, I'm sorry, guys. I just, every so often I have to take a look over at TikTok and just type something in the chat, or else if I don't do that, TikTok will end the live because it thinks I'm not here anymore. It's a lot of fucking work doing using the TikTok platform. I hope TikTok allows Meld, which is my streaming platform, to integrate into, and this is silly, but I digress. So reporting today tells us that in that classified briefing yesterday, the Admiral, who in my opinion is covering up for Hegseth, who's going to take it for him, right? He's going to take the fire for the administration. He's going to sacrifice himself, right? I don't know if maybe he didn't know about the Pentagon's line of reasoning or the bullshit they were telling, or maybe even though he might be a MAGA nut himself, he might be a MAGA nut. I don't know that. Maybe his integrity as an admiral, he can't just fucking lie that much. Maybe, right? I don't know, but I think that, right? So he says, according to reporting from CNN and subsequently now from Newsweek, right? He says, no. These guys were in no. He says, well, what is just obvious, right? That these guys were in no position to call for reinforcements, right? Which is just him saying that. The reason that this is such a big story at this moment is he, I guess, unintentionally or inadvertently or without knowledge of it, or maybe he chose to. I don't know what the fuck, right? But we're in the third or fourth version of the Hegseth Pentagon version of the story, the third or fourth conflicting lie, right? In terms of what actually happened. And now the Admiral comes out, apparently we learn, and contradicts the entire narrative, the entire latest lie, right? Which is that the guys were going to call for help. They were in a position to call for help, and they were going to continue the DRUG run. And at least the Admiral was able to tell us, to validate our own, baseline levels of common sense, where that's insane, right? So and blows that story out of the echo chamber, right? That can't be a thing anymore, because now the Admiral intentionally or unintentionally contradicted it, right? Which leaves us now with why'd you do it? Why'd you do it? Why did Pete give the order? Well, Pete didn't give the order according to the Admiral, but I think he did. But why did or didn't Pete give the order? And then why did you give the order? I did because they were legitimate targets. Why were they legitimate targets? They weren't. They were legitimate targets, before this fucking hearing that we're having. They were legitimate targets then, right? Because they were somehow magically, when they were floating on a fucking, piece of broken boat, right? They were somehow magically going to call in the troops from the cartel, right, to keep the run going. But you just said that that's not a thing. So why? How's this? How are they a legitimate target? Well, they just were. They just were. They were a legitimate target because that's what our operational requirements said, right? Right? I don't know what that means, but that's where we are now. So just to make sure, because I don't want to be a purveyor of misinformation, let's review the actual reporting. Let's see if I fucked anything up, because it can happen. It happens not infrequently, to make sure we set the record straight. And again, just so we're, a little bit more well-informed and not, I don't want my lives, I never want my lives to, folks to come out of the live dumber than they were when they entered the live, right? That can happen, right? But to the best of my ability, I will work ceaselessly to try to avoid that from happening, right? Because look, we watched together at the Substack Community Live 2 days ago. Together, we enjoyed the Village Idiots cabinet meeting, right? We watched it together, and I commented on it, and I made fun of it, and we did what we did for about 45 minutes to an hour, right? But there's no question that we came out of that live dumber than we went in, because we watched that. We watched that confederacy of imbeciles fawn over a sleeping idiot, right? You know what I mean? Is that real, right? Little Marco Rubio is saying to the Village Idiot, and sir, it has been thanks to your leadership, you're the only guy, you're the only one that is stopping all these wars and keeping all these people alive, sir. And meanwhile, while Marco is praising the idiot is... Right, literally. Marco is sitting right fucking here, or maybe right here, and he's talking to the idiot on camera, live TV, right? And internet and shit, and the imbecile sleeping. So we came out of that dumber, right? Because we viewed it. I don't want that to be the case from you guys coming to the Zenocracy multi-stream morning show, or whatever the fuck this is. I just wanted to get that out there, my friends. All right, so I'm just checking to see if I have any TikTok nasty messages from TikTok saying that some shit I've done wrong, and everything looks okay so far. That's good. So let me read let's read through those of you who can see the article. Let's read it together, and we'll share some of it with those of you who I can't pull it up for right now. Initial survivors of double tap strike didn't have radio backup. Report. 2 men unalived in a controversial double tap U.S. military strike on suspected drug trafficking vessel in September did not appear to have a radio or any other means of communication, the senior commander overseeing the operation told lawmakers. So I feel like I've gotten that right so far. Admiral Frank Mitch, not me, that's he's Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley. I don't know why Mitch is in quotes, but Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley, who ran Joint Special Operations Command at the time, delivered the update in closed-door briefings viewed by lawmakers from both parties. His account, reported by CNN and published Thursday, undercuts earlier private briefings, where defense officials suggested the survivors were attempting to radio for help. Lawmakers who viewed the video called it, quote, enormously disturbing. Think about Democratic Congressman Jim Himes. Himes is the first one that came out and referred to it as enormously disturbing. Newsweek continues with their Why It Matters section of the article. Bradley's acknowledgement that the survivors could not call for reinforcements removes the central claim previously used to argue they were still legitimate targets. CNN quoted one source familiar with Thursday's briefing who described the rationale for a second strike as, quote, fucking insane, end quote. That's not me, right? You guys hear me use the F word too much, right? This person who said it, who quoted CNN, was a Defense Department official. The shift adds to weeks of evolving explanations from the current administration. Newsweek has reported that Pentagon officials were aware survivors remained alive before the follow-up strike was ordered, citing sources who said surveillance footage showed the men clearly visible on the wreckage. If you remember, one of Drunken Pete Hegseth's arguments of his changing stories of how he really didn't know shit, right? He didn't know anything at all, right? He's nothing, right? One of Hegseth's arguments was that he couldn't see. This was at the cabinet meeting. He couldn't see the survivors because there was too much smog and fire. And he said to the reporters, the thing you guys don't understand is the fog of war. It was the fog of war. I couldn't see. And besides, I was busy doing something else. I was doing other meetings. First of all, what the fuck were you doing else, you moron? Did you go to maybe you were pouring a scotch and soda, right? Maybe, right? And I know that could be distracting for Hegseth, but he wasn't doing anything else, right? He was watching this, stimulated from what was happening, right? Hyperstimulated, probably, right? And he was, the surveillance footage. I didn't hear even one chicken shit GOP member of the House on the Armed Services Committee who are trying to cover up for the village idiot. I didn't even hear fucking Tom Cotton, right? The sociopath, senator, GOP senator, who said the hits were righteous and they were warranted and they were great, whatever the fuck he said, right? I didn't even hear him saying anybody else. Pete Hegseth is apparently the only guy who viewed the actual video. It's surveillance, it's recorded now, but he viewed it in real time, right? He's the only one who somehow couldn't see the survivors because of the fog of war. Everybody else could see them, but somehow Hegseth magically. Now, look, it's always possible that Hegseth was a little bleary-eyed. He might have been a little hungover, right? That's always a probability, right? That he may have been, when we all, once we, hit too much of the juice, we, our eyes get a little crisscrossed. We don't see things as they are, right? But come on. Anyway, I digress. Newsweek has reported that the Pentagon officials were aware survivors remained alive before the follow-up strike. I know I read this to you already, but I'm just reading it again. Was ordered, citing sources who said surveillance footage showed the men clearly visible on the wreckage. The Pentagon's Law of War Manual states that unaliving shipwrecked people who are, quote, in need of assistance and care, end quote, and refraining from hostile acts is prohibited, fueling scrutiny over whether the second strike violated those standards. It did. And I think that's the end of the story. So that's the end of the story, right? So you would think, now I'm bringing up another article, unfortunately TikTok, that I can't show you. This one is about GOP senators. It is clear. I know my analysis is biased. I get it, right? There's nobody that's going to accuse me of being pro-Trump, right? Right? There's no one um, that's going to argue that I don't have a political bias in how I analyze the news, right? And what I think about the village idiot Donald Trump and the goofballs who surround him, right? Um, but like so many stories, right? Even though I take this to an extreme, because again, my goal is so frequently to show you or to remind you how what that we're going to be okay because this is such a confederacy of idiots in the Trump administration, right? Um, there are things that are not murky, right? This is not murky, right? You don't whether you're, if there's any MAGA folks out there on TikTok and you disagree with my analysis, not the spirit of my analysis, because I'm sure you can disagree with that. But I don't think that any rational thinker, I don't even think that very many folks in the MAGA community buy into the bullshit that Hegseth is spewing, right? It is such a stretch. It is such a remarkable stretch to buy into the story that the Pentagon, that the administration, even to a certain extent that Admiral Bradley is sharing, right? That this is a justified strike, right? It's such a stretch that you would expect maybe finally chicken shit GOP senators would find just enough courage to get serious about this, right? Again, I don't expect chicken shit GOP members of the House because they're either really crazy or they're pretend crazy, right? So Donald Trump could commit any crime in front of any GOP House member, except for maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene now, which seems bizarre, but that's the case. And I really can't think of another one, which is fucking weird, right? But I think he could walk into the Capitol building and he could, do some violent thing to a Democrat on camera in plain sight. And the entire GOP House caucus could be standing right there and could say that he didn't do it, right? It could happen on live TV, right? And they could say, because they're so crazy or pretend crazy. And this is the difference. Andy Biggs, Lauren Boebert, formerly Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, like there's for whatever reason, more of them are not coming to in my head right now, but they're real crazy, over the top, racist, misogynist, bigots, corrupt. Just they're nuts. White nationalists, different versions of creepiness, right? And then there's pretend crazy. There's once dignified people, Elise Stefaniak, I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name right. Tom Emmer, Steve Scalise. These were once normal, decent people. But in order to survive in the Trump GOP House, they have to be crazy, right? Or they have to pretend to be totally and completely fucking crazy, right? And that makes, for me personally, that makes them more pathetic than the actual crazy ones. That makes them more pathetic than the actual white nationalists and profane racists in the in the House GOP caucus, because this Confederacy of goons. Their values are different, and they just have subjugated those values to the will of an imbecile. So there's a certain patheticness to that, in my opinion. But irrespective, it's GOP senators who are not crazy for the most part. Forget, and you have Tom Cotton and Mark Wayne Mullen and Mike Lee. I mean, you have the crazies in there, right? But for the most part, they're, with the exception of Rand Paul and Rand Paul only, the GOP and occasionally Senator Kennedy, with the exception of all of them, the rest of them are cowards. Total and complete cowards all the time, every minute of every hour of every day. But you would think that confederacy of cowards, with something this significant, something this obvious, something that I think even the MAGA base can see through, right? Which is murder on the high seas, right? You would think that that's where they would step in finally. And they would say, all right, look, Hegseth needs to be disciplined. I'm not saying that I would expect them to have the courage to impeach him. Well, you'd have to have the House impeach him anyway, and the House GOP crazies and pretend crazies would never do it. But I'm not saying that I would expect Senate GOP members to find the courage to speak about the fact that the House should impeach, right? But at least I would think that something this egregious, right, would afford them an opportunity to at least find the courage to say Hegseth needs to be held accountable, right? Mr. President, sir, right? Because they would call him sir because they know he likes that. You need to fire this motherfucker, right? Because he's a criminal. And that inadvertently makes you a criminal, right? The Hill reports today, GOP senators lacking confidence in Hegseth say his future is Trump's call. Let me repeat that. Cowards, fucking cowards. GOP senators lacking confidence, so they know, the GOP senators know that Hegseth committed a war crime, right? A fucking war crime. They know he committed a war crime. Say his future is Trump's call. Not Trump, you need to do this, but it's up to you, Mr. President. You must choose what to do with him. Fucking cowards. Let me read some of the reporting. Republican senators who are, this is from the Hill, by the way, for the folks over on TikTok who I can't show the actual document to or the actual reporting to. Republican senators who are growing increasingly exasperated with the proliferation of high-profile controversies at the Pentagon are not expressing much confidence in Secretary Pete Hegseth's leadership. But they say it's up to President Trump whether to keep him in the cabinet. Many GOP senators have been careful not to provoke Trump's anger by publicly criticizing Hegseth, whom Trump went to bat for during difficult Senate confirmation proceedings in January. Cowards. Can you guys imagine? And I know the pro-democracy folks can't, but if there's any folks from the MAGA community who are here just to own this lib, and that's fine. I haven't been reading the chat, so I don't know. But can any of you imagine, even if you're part of the MAGA community, actually being afraid of Donald Trump? Can you imagine actually being afraid of that idiot, right? Like, just think about it. Think about GOP senators and how utterly pathetic they are. Because even if you agree with Trump or you don't agree with the village idiot, just being so scared of him, of his influence, that even when you know, right? Even when you know that he committed, that his man, right, committed an egregious crime, a war crime, a crime against humanity, a crime that not only will he be prosecuted for when the village idiot is no longer president, but he might be prosecuted here in the U.S. He will be prosecuted here in the U.S. Hegseth will be prosecuted in the U.S. After 2028 when there is a new attorney general, whoever the fuck that is, right? He will be. He will be. He might even be prosecuted, you know, by the International Criminal Court at The Hague, right? He might even be prosecuted for a war crime. We'll see about that. But he will be prosecuted here, right? And you can't even find the courage just to at least say, because you're a senator and you have your own little bully pulpit, you're representing a state, and the dignity of the, you can't even dignify the state that you're representing, right? By saying that, Mr. President, Hegseth has to go. You must fire him. That is just the level of lameness that it's just watching these people subjugate their will over and over again to a moron, no matter what that fucking moron does, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen such a display of weakness, I've never seen such a display of forget about like their oath of office and their responsibilities as a senator, right? Forget about that. But I've never seen such a weak display of just, having some baseline self-respect left. They're just, they've really, I mean, they've allowed themselves, the men and the women that are, and I'm not, again, I'm talking about Lisa Murkowski. I'm talking about John Thune, right? I'm talking about not the crazies, because the crazies in the Senate are in a different category, right? I'm talking about the supposedly normal ones, right? They've all been neutered. They've allowed themselves to be neutered by a fucking idiot, right? A senile, depleted, old, vain, stupid buffoon who, slathers his face up with, rotisserie chicken, overcooked rotisserie chicken skin-colored makeup daily. I mean, you can't make it up. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't have written this into a movie script. It's ridiculous beyond comprehension. Anyway, let me continue reading the reporting. At the same time, they aren't vouching for him and are keeping their distance from the growing list of controversies. Senator Tom Tillis, who cast the decisive vote to confirm Hegseth on January 24th, said Thursday he has supported some of Hegseth's decisions as Secretary of Defense, but other moves have left him confused. That's the best you can do, Tom Tillis. Thom or Tom, whatever the fuck your name is. And you're even fucking retiring, right? You're not even trying to run for re-election. You still can't grow a set of balls. What a fucking legacy for a 50, 60-year career that this putz is walking away from, right? That Donald John Trump, or as I like to refer to him as Donald John James Jesus Christ Trump, the second Messiah, right? Is driving Tom Tillis out of office and into, complete patheticness, for lack of a better term. Quote, Pete Hegseth has done things that I completely agree with, but he's also done things that are confusing to me, said Tillis. The North Carolina senator said Hegseth should have taken more responsibility for sharing sensitive military operational information on Signal, a commercial messaging app, and a chat. A group of journalists, in a chat group, a journalist was inadvertently included in. That's another story for another day. We've talked about that ad nauseum. Quote, you just got to own it if you share classified information outside of the classified channels with people who don't have clearance. It's pretty cut and dried. Just accept it. Tillis said. Fuck that. There's more reporting here. You guys that can see the article. Um, you know, uh, but it's just more reporting from. It's more quotes from these cowardly senators, and I just don't have the patience to do it. Anyway, guys, it is. Oh my good, it's almost 11 o'clock. I'm trying to keep these lives to under an hour. So I'm going to wrap this one. I wanted to get into the Netflix story. We'll be getting into that in the Substack subscriber live at noon. So please join me there. If you're not a subscriber yet at Substack, please, the link is over in the profile. Please consider doing that. It's Zenocracy is the name of our community, zenocracy.news. It's Zen and democracy. You get it? Zenocracy. And that's where I can speak a little bit more freely. I don't have to deal with the TikTok algorithm over there. And we're going to get into the Netflix Warner Brothers stuff and the Trump administration's response to that, and some other topics. I just don't know what they are yet. I've got to look at the news and figure out what else. And we'll probably be talking about, a little bit more of this stuff as well. So I love you guys. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for the group therapy. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, one live at a time. That's how we get through these next 3.2 some odd years. That's how we've gotten this far. I'll see you guys over at Substack. If we don't see you there, I might squeeze some lives in. I always say to do this, but it never happens. Over the weekend, both full community lives and maybe some Substack only lives as well. If not, I'll see you on Monday. TikTok, I have to close the platforms out separately. So TikTok, I'm going to wrap you guys first. So Substack, you can, if you want to stick around for another 60 seconds, that's about how long we're going to be here. So, and let me just take a quick look. One of the things I haven't been doing before I wrap the live is I haven't really, because I've been sort of getting used to the new tech and everything, I haven't really been looking at the comments at all. So let me just bring some of those TikTok comments over here and just see what people are talking about. GamerVetNat bad. Oh, thanks, GamerVetNat Dad. Noon for reminding everybody it's noon at Eastern time. Corn Pop. I hold him accountable for saving tens of thousands of lives. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Corn Pop, but I haven't seen the live stream. They drank too much Kool-Aid, Beery. DTS is affecting so many. Maybe we need a vaccination. Oh, Rancho Man. Yes, if you're still here, DTS. So it's Donald Trump syndrome. Maybe we need to vaccinate him for that. Usually, that's pretty good actually. That's because they always tell me I have DTS, and Rancho Man flipped that around, and I never thought of that. That's pretty well thought up. Okay, guys. All right. Anyway, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just kind of bouncing through the messages real fast and accomplishing nothing. Marcus had a quick question. What do you got, Marcus? Let me just leave it up here for a minute and see if Marcus's question comes up, and then we'll wrap the live. I think. I hope. Also, have you guys? My lighting is really out of fucking whack. I've got all this new tech that I'm trying to figure out how to use effectively, and I've gotten much of it down, but the lighting is out of whack. You see how kind of like muted the image looks and how pale. I have to kind of get my lighting straightened out. It's too long to write in here. They don't give you enough space, so I ask over Substack. Awesome, Marcus. Okay, so, yeah, send it or send it in a DM, and we can talk about it offline if you want. But we'll definitely chat it up. All right, guys, I love you. Thank you for being here. Let's wrap the TikTok live first again, and then we'll wrap Substack. See you, TikTok. Okay, TikTok is gone, and Substack. Let me just stop the recording, and I'll see you guys at noon.